Black Phone 2 dives far deeper into the supernatural than its predecessor, transforming what was once a gritty serial killer story into a ghostly and metaphysical battle between faith, trauma, and evil. The sequel brings back Finney, Mason Thames, and Gwen, Madeleine McGraw, who, 4 years after escaping the Grabber's clutches, find that their ordeal isn't truly over. Despite the Grabber's apparent death in the first movie, his influence lingers, festering in the nightmares of those who survived him. Blumhouse and director Scott Derrickson doubled down on expanding the Black Phone's world, establishing new rules for psychic powers, spiritual planes, and ghostly hauntings. But beyond the jump scares and eerie dreamscapes, the film's ending solidifies its larger themes: the persistence of trauma, the inheritance of faith, and the cyclical nature of evil. Here's a full breakdown of how the Grabber returns, what he wants, how Gwen's powers evolve, and what the Black Phone 2 ultimately means for its haunted protagonists. How the Grabber returns in the Black Phone 2. When the Black Phone 2 opens, Finney and Gwen are struggling to rebuild normal lives. Finney has grown into a withdrawn teenager, prone to cynicism and quiet anger, while Gwen's psychic dreams have intensified. She begins to see visions of 3 murdered boys, campers whose deaths predate even the events of the first film. These dreams are foggy at first, shown through Derrickson's trademark Super 8 sequences that recall his earlier work on Sinister. But as the story progresses, it becomes clear that these boys were the Grabber's first victims, and that their restless spirits are somehow keeping his soul tethered to the mortal world. The Grabber, once a flesh-and-blood predator, now exists as a vengeful spirit haunting the grounds of Alpine Lake, the camp where those original murders occurred. His resurrection isn't physical but spiritual. Fueled by the terror and pain of his victims, his soul has become a malevolent echo of its former self. Derrickson treats this twist less as a gimmick and more as a logical extension of the universe's rules. After all, the first film already showed that the dead could communicate through the titular Black Phone. If ghosts can call from beyond, why couldn't the Grabber return the favor? When Gwen begins to dream of him, the Grabber first appears as a whispering shadow in the corners of her visions, then gradually grows more tangible and dangerous. His ability to reach through dreams to cause harm mirrors a nightmare on Elm Street's Freddy Krueger, and Derrickson doesn't shy away from the parallel. There's even a sequence where Gwen awakens with claw-like scratches across her arm, realizing that the Grabber can now wound her from the other side. His new power represents not just his hellish rebirth, but his enduring desire for revenge, to destroy Finney by killing the sister who saved him. The Grabber's origins, and the source of his power. As the film unfolds, the Black Phone 2 expands its lore to reveal how the Grabber's powers are rooted in his early murders. Decades earlier, when he worked at Alpine Lake under the alias Wild Bill Hickok, the Grabber preyed on young campers, hiding their bodies beneath the frozen lake. Their tormented souls never found peace, and over time, their fear and anguish became the very energy that sustained the Grabber's ghost. By killing them in a place steeped in faith and isolation, he inadvertently created his own spiritual anchor, a haunting circle that traps both the innocent and the damned. When Gwen and Finney arrive at the camp years later, the area's energy reacts to her psychic presence, awakening the dormant spirits and, in turn, resurrecting the Grabber's essence. The film makes it clear that this haunting is cyclical. The living attract the dead, and the dead, if unresolved, will continue to bleed into the world of the living. The Grabber's connection to Gwen's dreams is both parasitic and personal. His vengeance becomes a metaphor for trauma's refusal to die quietly. During one of Gwen's dream confrontations, the Grabber admits that after his death he was sent straight to the pit, where his soul was hollowed out until only his malice remained. This distorted version of himself, more entity than man, becomes the villain of the Black Phone 2. His goal is simple yet terrifyingly personal: to annihilate Gwen and make Finney suffer eternally for what he did in the first film. Gwen's psychic evolution and her connection to the dead. While the first film positioned Gwen as the intuitive younger sister, the Black Phone 2 elevates her to protagonist status. Her psychic dreams, once sporadic, now serve as the movie's primary gateway between worlds. Early on, she begins to communicate with the 3 ghost boys, who appear intermittently in her dreams pleading for help. These spirits guide her toward uncovering their buried bodies, and by extension, toward understanding the Grabber's supernatural return. As Gwen's connection to the spirit world strengthens, she also begins to sense the presence of her long-dead mother, Hope. Hope's reemergence is one of the sequel's most emotional developments. Through dreamlike conversations, Gwen communicates with a younger version of her mother, learning that Hope shared her gift but suffered because of it. Hope explains that psychic ability in their family line is both a blessing and a curse, a conduit for divine intuition that can also attract darkness. This revelation deepens Gwen's inner conflict. She fears her power, but knows it's the only tool capable of defeating the Grabber. By the film's third act, Gwen fully embraces her role as a dream warrior of sorts. In one striking sequence, she confronts the grabber inside a collapsing dream version of the camp mess hall where spectral flames consume the walls around them. Using her newfound strength, Gwen channels the spirits of the 3 murdered boys, turning their collective rage against the grabber. Meanwhile, in the real world, Finney and Ernesto, Miguel Mora, uncover the boys' remains beneath the ice, allowing their souls to finally rest. As the spirits are freed, the grabber's power collapses, giving Gwen the chance to deliver the final blow, a spiritual banishment that dissolves his essence into ash. The grabber's link to Gwen and Finney's mother, Hope. Perhaps the most surprising reveal in Black Phone 2 is the retroactive connection between the grabber and the siblings' mother. Hope, as it turns out, once worked as a counselor at Alpine Lake, where the grabber, then known as Wild Bill Hickok, served as a handyman. When Hope's psychic visions revealed his crimes, including the abduction of a local paperboy named Billy, she attempted to expose him. Tragically, the grabber discovered her investigation and murdered her, disguising the crime as a suicide. This retcon reframes much of the first film's emotional foundation. In hindsight, the grabber's fixation on Finney and Gwen wasn't random. It was personal. He had known their family, even visited their home, and his abduction of Finney years later takes on a more sinister meaning. It wasn't merely the act of a predator, it was an act of vengeance and possession. The sequel uses this revelation to add moral and emotional weight to the confrontation at Alpine Lake. For Gwen, defeating the grabber isn't just about survival or closure, it's about avenging her mother and breaking a generational cycle of trauma. Finney's role and emotional arc. Although Gwen drives much of the story, Finney's arc is crucial to understanding the film's conclusion. When the sequel begins, he's numbing his pain through deflection, snark, weed, and detachment. His trauma is internalized, festering into guilt over killing the grabber in the first film. He resents that everyone calls him a hero when he feels permanently scarred by the ordeal. Thames delivers a subtle performance that captures that tension. Finney is older, but not yet healed. When Gwen reaches out for his help, Finney initially refuses, terrified of reawakening the nightmare. But as the supernatural threat escalates, he realizes avoidance isn't healing, it's surrender. His turning point comes when the grabber manifests in the waking world, attacking Gwen through a mirror portal. In a cathartic moment, Finney picks up the same black phone that once saved him and hears the voices of his former fellow captives urging him to finish what he started. This spurs him to confront his fear head-on, culminating in a final act where Finney physically strikes the grabber's fading apparition, symbolically reclaiming his strength. By the time the credits roll, Finney has faced the ghost both literally and emotionally. His decision to stop running from fear mirrors Gwen's decision to embrace her power. Together, their arcs form the heart of Black Phone 2, not just about defeating evil, but learning to coexist with the echoes of trauma rather than being consumed by them. Themes of faith and the meaning of the ending. One of the most striking differences between the Black Phone and its sequel is the presence of faith, not blind religiosity, but the kind of belief that sustains people through darkness. Gwen's prayers, which were treated skeptically in the first movie, are taken seriously here. Her faith becomes an emotional backbone for the story, though Derrickson and Cargill are careful not to make it overtly religious. Instead, the film distinguishes between genuine faith, rooted in compassion and resilience, and self-righteous dogma. This contrast is embodied by Barbara, a devout but judgmental camp worker who dismisses Gwen's dreams as witchcraft. When tragedy strikes and she initially refuses to help, it's another camp worker, Mustang, who reminds her that faith without empathy is meaningless. By the film's end, Barbara and her husband join the effort to recover the boys' bodies, helping Gwen bring peace to their souls. This subplot may seem minor, but it reinforces the film's message, that true faith manifests through action and kindness, not condemnation. The film's final act intertwines faith, forgiveness, and closure. After the grabber is banished, Gwen has one last vision of her mother, who appears bathed in light near the thawed lake. Hope tells her that the grabber's soul is gone, burned away by what he made others endure, and reassures her that the world beyond is not only real but just. The moment serves as both confirmation of heaven and metaphorical healing. For Gwen, faith is no longer about prayer for safety, but belief in redemption and purpose. The final scene and what it means for the franchise. In the film's closing moments, Finney and Gwen stand by the lake as the sun rises, the ice slowly melting into calm water. Finney drops the black phone into the depths, symbolizing closure and a farewell to the ghosts that once guided him. Yet as the camera lingers underwater, the faint ring of the phone echoes one last time, ambiguous, haunting, and deliberate. It's a classic Blumhouse stinger, a hint that evil never truly dies, only changes form. What makes this ending effective isn't the tease of another sequel, but how it reframes the story as a cycle of trauma, faith, and persistence. The Black Phone 2 suggests that the grabber's spirit may have been defeated, but the darkness he represents, the fear, the guilt, the spiritual scars, lingers. For Derrickson, who has long woven themes of belief and the supernatural into his horror films, it's a fitting conclusion, cathartic yet open-ended. The true meaning of The Black Phone 2, at its heart, The Black Phone 2 isn't just about ghosts or killers. It's about survival, not of the body, but of the soul. The grabber's hellish rebirth represents the way trauma can reappear, reshaped but still dangerous, while Gwen's psychic strength symbolizes the courage to confront what haunts us rather than suppress it. Faith, in this sense, becomes a weapon against despair. In the end, both Finney and Gwen find healing not through denial but through confrontation and compassion. Finney's confession that he's tired of being scared is the film's emotional anchor, and Gwen's response, "Then don't be. Fight back," becomes the thesis statement for the sequel. By freeing the trapped souls and facing their family's dark legacy, the siblings break a spiritual cycle of violence and silence. The Black Phone 2 closes not on a scream but on silence, the kind that follows release. The grabber may be gone, but his story serves as a grim reminder. Evil feeds on fear, but it withers in the light of understanding and unity. In confronting their nightmares, Gwen and Finney don't just defeat a ghost, they reclaim their lives.